The old ship floated in the massive hangar of Stellar Alliance Station 6, its gray hull marked with small dents and patches of mismatched paint. Captain James Miller stood at the viewing window, staring at his new command with mixed feelings. The light cruiser Relentless wasn't much to look at, but it was humanity's first step into the galaxy's most powerful military force. "Well, it certainly lived up to its name," commented Anna Reed, his chief engineer, as she joined him at the window. Her red hair was already tied back in her usual work braid, and her fingers fidgeted with a tablet displaying the ship's specifications. Miller nodded slowly. 20 years of service in the Alliance fleet. Now she's ours. He turned to face the small group of human officers gathering behind him. They were the first humans ever accepted into the Stellar Alliance's military, and everyone knew this assignment was more about politics than trust. Captain Miller, a tall, blue-skinned Alliance officer, approached them, his movements stiff and formal. "I am Officer Tren. I trust you find your new command adequate." There was a hint of superiority in his tone that made Miller's jaw tighten. "The Relentless is a fine vessel," Miller replied diplomatically. "We're honored to join the Alliance fleet." Tren's expression suggested he thought honor had little to do with it. "Indeed. Though I should warn you, the quantum drive is somewhat temperamental. We've been meaning to decommission her for the past 2 years, but now she can serve as a perfect training vessel for our new allies." Anna's fingers tightened on her tablet, but she kept her face neutral. Miller recognized that look. She was already thinking of ways to prove the alien officer wrong. The tour of the ship was brief and somewhat humiliating. Tren pointed out every scratched panel and outdated system with barely concealed satisfaction. The bridge, at least, was spacious, though its control interfaces were several generations behind current Alliance technology. When they finally reached engineering, Anna couldn't contain herself any longer. "The power distribution system is completely inefficient," she said, running her hands over a control panel. "We could easily increase output by 30% with some basic modifications." Tren's expression darkened. "The ship's systems are calibrated to Alliance specifications. Any unauthorized modifications would be a violation of protocol." He paused, then added with a thin smile, "Though I doubt you could improve on our technology, even if you were permitted to try." After Tren left, Miller gathered his senior staff in the ship's briefing room. Besides Anna, there was Jack Turner, the tactical officer, whose previous experience included designing weapons systems for Earth's Defense Force. Lisa Park handled communications and sensors, while Mike Cooper was their navigation specialist. All of them wore the same expression, a mixture of disappointment and determination. "They gave us this ship because they think it will keep us busy and out of the way," Miller said, pacing slowly around the room. "They expect us to struggle with the outdated systems, to prove that humans aren't ready for real responsibility in the Alliance." "The power core is actually fascinating," Anna interrupted, her eyes bright with excitement. "It's an older model, yes, but it's much more accessible than the newer ones. The modern Alliance ships have so many safety interlocks and automated systems that you can barely adjust anything without top-level clearance." Jack leaned forward, interested. "What are you thinking?" "Their newer ships are like sealed boxes, elegant and powerful, but impossible to modify. This one," Anna grinned, "this one we can work with. The older technology is more basic, more flexible." "The regulations clearly state," Lisa began, but Miller cut her off. "The regulations were written by a species that hasn't faced a serious military challenge in 300 years. They'd forgotten how to improvise, how to adapt." He stopped pacing and faced his crew. "We're not here just to prove humans can follow Alliance protocols. We're here to show them why they need us." Over the next few days, the human crew began the process of making the Relentless their home. They cleaned, repaired, and familiarize themselves with the ship's systems. Anna spent countless hours in engineering, making detailed scans and muttering to herself about potential and workarounds. The first real test came during their shakedown cruise. They were running standard maneuvers in a quiet sector when the quantum drive began to falter. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as the ship dropped out of quantum space with a shudder. "Status report," Miller called out, gripping his command chair as the ship stabilized. "The drive's magnetic containment field is fluctuating," Anna reported from engineering. Standard procedure would be to shut down and wait for repair crews. Miller smiled slightly. "And non-standard procedure?" There was a pause, then Anna's voice came back, excitement barely contained. I think I see why these drives were abandoned. The containment system is too rigid. It's trying to maintain perfect field symmetry, but with a worn drive, that's impossible. But if we reconfigure the field generators to work asymmetrically, compensating for the wear patterns, is it safe? Miller asked. Safer than the original design, actually. Not exactly by Alliance specifications. Miller looked around his bridge. Every face showed the same eagerness to prove themselves. "Do it," he ordered. The ship hummed as Anna's modifications took effect. The warning lights faded, and a quantum drive's power curve stabilized at a level higher than its original specifications. "Drive is operating at 115% of rated capacity," Anna reported triumphantly. "And this is just the beginning, Captain. There's so much more we could do." Miller sat back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Document everything," he ordered. "But mark it all as preliminary testing data. No need to submit official reports just yet." That evening, as the Relentless cruised back to Station 6, Miller stood in engineering with Anna, looking at the modified drive controls. "They thought they were punishing us with this assignment," Anna said, running her hand along a power conduit. "They don't understand that older technology like this, it's like a mechanical watch compared to a digital one. More parts, more complicated, but also more possibilities if you understand how everything works together." Miller nodded. "Keep pushing the boundaries, but be smart about it. We're going to turn their punishment into an opportunity." He looked around the engine room, seeing not outdated technology but potential waiting to be unleashed. "They gave us their weakest ship because they thought it would hold us back. Instead, they've given us exactly what we needed. A chance to show them what humans can really do." As he walked back to his quarters, Miller could feel the steady thrum of the enhanced quantum drive through the deck plates. The Relentless might be the joke of the fleet now, but he had a feeling that wouldn't last long. His crew had already started to see the ship's true potential, and this was just the beginning. The Alliance thought they were being clever, giving humans their cast-off technology. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate your allies. 2 months into their assignment, the Relentless had become more than just a ship. It had become a laboratory for human innovation. The engine room no longer looked anything like a standard Alliance vessel. Anna Reed had removed several panels from the walls, exposing the power conduits and control systems beneath. Cables and new components, some borrowed from Earth technology, others built from scratch, created a web of modifications throughout the ship. "You're going to want to see this, Captain," Anna called out as Miller entered engineering for his daily inspection. She was covered in grease, a sign she'd been working on something big. "Remember how the Alliance weapons can't fire at full power because of heat buildup?" Miller nodded. It was a common problem. The energy weapons would overheat after sustained use, forcing ships to pause firing while their cooling systems caught up. The Alliance had accepted this limitation as unavoidable. "Well, look at this." Anna pulled up a diagram on her tablet. "Their cooling system is actually very efficient, but they're thinking about it wrong. They try to cool the whole weapon assembly at once. But if we redirect the coolant flow, targeting the most critical components first. She grinned. We can increase sustained firing time by 300%. Is that safe? Miller asked, though he already knew the answer. Anna never suggested anything that would put the ship at risk. Safer than the original design. I've added emergency cutoffs that the Alliance never thought to include. She paused. Though we might want to keep this modification quiet for now. It's not exactly standard. Miller smiled. The list of non-standard modifications was growing longer every day. Jack Turner had already revamped the targeting systems, combining Alliance energy weapons with targeting algorithms developed for Earth's missile defense systems. The result was a weapons platform that could track and engage targets more effectively than any other ship in the fleet. In the ship's mess hall later that day, Miller sat with his senior staff, discussing their latest projects over coffee. A human addition to the ship that had proven surprisingly popular even among the few Alliance crew members assigned to them. The real breakthrough, Jack was saying, is how we've integrated the shield systems with the weapons. Alliance ships treat them as separate systems, but if we synchronize them. He trailed off as Lisa Park rushed into the mess hall, her face excited. Captain, you need to see this, she said, setting her tablet on the table. I've been studying the Alliance communications protocols, and I found something interesting. They're quantum entanglement communicators. They're only using about 60% of their potential bandwidth. Why? Miller asked, leaning forward. Because they're perfect, Lisa explained. The entangled particles maintain absolutely stable connections. But if we deliberately introduce tiny fluctuations in the quantum field, she brought up a complex diagram. We can piggyback additional data streams in the noise. I can double our effective communication range and add encrypted channels that won't show up on standard Alliance scans. Miller looked around the table at his crew. In just 2 months, they had transformed the Relentless from a relic into something entirely new. None of the modifications were obvious from the outside. They'd been careful about that. But inside, the ship was becoming a hybrid of human innovation and Alliance technology. The real test of their modifications came sooner than expected. During a routine patrol, they picked up a distress signal from a civilian mining vessel. When they arrived, they found the ship under attack by raiders, a common problem in the outer sectors. Alliance protocol says we should wait for backup, Lisa reported, reading from the official regulations. Miller watched the tactical display as the mining vessel took another hit. How long until help arrives? Nearest patrol is 40 minutes out. Miller straightened in his command chair. The mining ship doesn't have 40 minutes. Battle stations. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Jack's modified targeting systems came online, while Anna diverted power through her enhanced distribution network. The raiders, 3 small but well-armed ships, turned to face the Relentless. They're probably thinking we're easy prey, Jack said with a grin. The old, broken-down human ship. The first raider opened fire, energy beams streaking toward the Relentless. But instead of taking evasive action, Miller ordered the ship to hold position. The modified shields absorbed the attack, and Lisa's enhanced communication system was already breaking through the raiders' encryption. Their shields are calibrated for standard Alliance weapons, Jack reported. They're not ready for what we've got. Miller nodded. Show them what this old ship can do. The Relentless's weapons opened up, firing sustained bursts that should have been impossible with Alliance technology. The first raider's shields collapsed under the precision barrage. The second tried to flee but found its engines suddenly unresponsive. Lisa had used the hidden communication channels to inject a virus into their control systems. The third raider, realizing this was no ordinary Alliance vessel, surrendered immediately. After the battle, as they escorted the grateful mining ship back to safety, Miller received a priority message from Alliance Command. Someone had noticed their unusual performance during the engagement. They want us to report for a full inspection, Miller told his senior staff. Apparently, our power readings during the battle were outside normal parameters. Anna looked worried. If they do a detailed scan, they'll find exactly what they expect to find, Miller said firmly. Lisa, how are those sensor scramblers coming along? Lisa smiled. Ready to go, Captain. As far as their scans will show, we're just a lucky old ship with a brave crew. That's not entirely untrue, Miller said. We are lucky. Lucky they underestimated us. Lucky they gave us a ship we could actually work with instead of one of their perfect modern vessels. The crew spent the next 2 days preparing for inspection. Some modifications were carefully hidden, others disguised as routine maintenance. Anna worked tirelessly to create false sensor readings that would satisfy the Alliance inspectors. As Miller stood on his bridge, watching the inspection ship approach, he felt a surge of pride. The Alliance had meant to humble humanity by giving them an obsolete vessel. Instead, they had given them the freedom to innovate, to prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in having the most advanced technology, but in understanding how to improve what they had. Inspection ship is hailing us, Lisa reported. Let them come, Miller said quietly. Let them look all they want. Sometimes the best place to hide is right in plain sight. He smiled as he remembered something his grandfather used to say about old cars. It's not about how shiny it is on the outside. It's about what's under the hood that counts. The Relentless might still look like the weakest ship in the fleet, but appearances could be deceiving, and Miller had a feeling that someday soon the Alliance would be very glad they had given humanity a chance to prove themselves, even if it hadn't been their intention. The Alliance inspection team left the Relentless confused but satisfied. They had found nothing they could definitively call a violation of regulations, though several of them wore puzzled expressions as they departed. As soon as they were gone, Miller called a meeting in engineering, where Anna had spent the last 3 days hiding their more creative modifications. They bought it, Lisa said, relief clear in her voice. Though that senior inspector kept asking about our power readings during the Raider incident. Let them wonder, Anna replied, already pulling panels off to restore their modifications. The best part is, they actually gave us some useful information without realizing it. She pulled up a technical readout on her tablet. I got a good look at their scanning equipment. Now I know exactly what they're looking for, and more importantly, what they're not looking for. Miller was about to respond when the ship's alert system activated. Lisa's voice came over the intercom. Captain to the bridge. Emergency transmission from Alliance Command. When Miller reached the bridge, the situation became clear. An Alliance outpost near the border of protected space had sent out a distress signal. Pirates, far better armed than the usual raiders, had launched a major attack on the station. All available ships are ordered to respond, Lisa reported, reading the transmission. But we're the only vessel close enough to reach them before. She paused, her face grim. The pirates have brought in heavy weapons. The station's shields won't last more than an hour. Miller checked the tactical display. Time to reach the station at normal speed. 53 minutes, Jack replied. Even at maximum safe speed, we'd be cutting it close. What about unsafe speed? Miller asked, looking at Anna's engineering station. Anna's fingers flew over her controls. Those drive modifications we've been working on. They're not fully tested. But if we bypass the safety limiters and route power through the experimental circuits, she looked up, we could make it in 30 minutes, though it might burn out some systems. The station has over 300 people on it, Miller said quietly. Make it happen. The next 30 minutes pushed the Relentless to its limits. The ship shuddered as it moved faster than its designers had ever intended. Warning lights flashed across every console, but Anna's modifications held. They dropped out of quantum speed to find chaos. 4 pirate vessels hammering the station's failing shields with concentrated fire. Their ships are top of the line, Jack reported, surprise in his voice. Military-grade weapons. They shouldn't have access to that kind of firepower. We're being hailed. Lisa cut in. It's the station commander. The screen activated to show a desperate-looking Alliance officer. Relentless, thank the stars. But you're the human ship. You should wait for reinforcements. These pirates are using stolen Alliance military equipment. Miller's response was calm but firm. We're what you've got, Commander. Just hold on a little longer. He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. Time to show them what this old ship can really do. Jack, are those experimental torpedoes ready? Jack grinned. Armed and loaded, Captain. Anna's phase shift modifications should let them bypass their shields completely. Lisa, deploy those communication scramblers. Let's see how well their stolen equipment works when they can't coordinate. Miller settled into his command chair. Anna, give us everything you can to the weapons. We're not holding anything back this time. The pirates, seeing only a single outdated cruiser approaching, split their formation to deal with this new threat quickly. It was exactly what Miller had hoped for. The Relentless's first salvo caught them completely by surprise. Phase-shifted torpedoes passing straight through their expensive shields to detonate against their hulls. Direct hits, Jack reported with satisfaction. Their shield generators are trying to compensate, but they can't adapt to our hybrid weapons. The pirates tried to regroup, but Lisa's electronic warfare suite was tearing through their command and control systems. Their formation fell into disarray as conflicting orders filled their communications channels. One of the pirate ships, larger than the others, turned to bring its main guns to bear on the Relentless. Energy beams powerful enough to crack a planet's crust lanced out, only to be met by the cruiser's modified shields. Anna's power distribution network redirected the energy, actually using it to reinforce their defenses. They're not used to their targets getting stronger when they shoot them, Anna said with pride. Those energy recycling circuits are working better than I hoped. The battle that followed would later be described in Alliance reports as irregular and technically impossible. The Relentless moved with speed and agility that defied its size, its weapons striking with devastating precision. The pirate ships, despite their superior technology, found themselves unable to cope with attacks that followed no known doctrine. When the last pirate vessel surrendered, the station's commander was almost speechless. How? That was incredible. But your ship, the readings we're getting. None of this should be possible. Just some creative engineering, Miller replied modestly. We should secure these pirates before reinforcements arrive. I'm sure Alliance intelligence will want to know where they got their equipment. The aftermath brought more scrutiny than ever. Admiral White himself arrived to investigate, accompanied by a team of Alliance technical experts. They swarmed over the Relentless, trying to understand how an obsolete cruiser had defeated 4 ships using the latest military technology. Your report makes for interesting reading, Captain Miller, Admiral White said during their debriefing. Though I notice it's rather sparse on technical details. We simply made the best use of available resources, Admiral, Miller replied carefully. The Relentless may be old, but she's proven herself reliable. The Admiral's expression was unreadable. Indeed, though our analysts are quite puzzled by some of the sensor readings from the battle, your power outputs, weapon configurations, shield harmonics, they all show significant deviations from standard parameters. Old ships can be unpredictable, Miller offered. Their systems don't always match factory specifications. Quite. Admiral White studied him for a long moment. You realize, Captain, that any unauthorized modifications to Alliance military equipment are strictly forbidden. Of course, Admiral. We maintain the ship according to all applicable regulations. The Admiral stood, looking out the window at where the Relentless waited in its dock. The thing about regulations, Captain, is that they're written based on what we think is possible. He turned back to Miller. Perhaps it's time we reconsidered some of our assumptions about what is and isn't possible. especially where humans are concerned. As Miller watched the Admiral leave, he realized something had changed. The Alliance had given them the relentless expecting limitations. Instead, they had discovered possibilities. And now, watching the repair crews swarm over the captured pirate ships, Miller could see Alliance engineers studying the battle recordings with intense interest. The joke of the fleet had become something else entirely, proof that sometimes the most powerful innovations come not from having the best technology, but from having the creativity to use what you have in ways no one ever expected. The mood aboard the Relentless had changed after their victory over the pirates. Alliance ships no longer treated them with quiet disdain. Now they were met with curious looks and cautious respect. Even better, Anna and her engineering team had been granted special dispensation to continue their experimental modifications under Admiral White's supervision. But their newfound recognition came with a price. Alliance intelligence had discovered something disturbing while interrogating the captured pirates. The advanced weapons and ships hadn't been stolen at random. They were part of a coordinated effort to probe Alliance defenses. Miller stood in the tactical room with his senior staff, studying the long-range sensor data that Lisa had compiled. The patterns were clear but made no sense according to known Alliance military doctrine. "They're testing us," Jack said, pointing to attack patterns from the last 6 months. "Each raid pushes a little further. Try something new. They're learning how we fight." "But who has the resources for something like this?" Lisa asked, scrolling through intelligence reports. "Pirates don't organize on this scale." Their answer came 3 days later in the form of an emergency transmission that shook the entire Alliance. A border patrol had encountered something impossible. A fleet of biomechanical ships unlike anything in known space. The patrol's last transmission spoke of weapons that adapted to Alliance defenses and shields that seemed to learn from each attack. "The Dark Swarm," Admiral White told them during an emergency briefing. "We thought they were just stories, legends from the far reaches of space, a race of cybernetic beings that consume everything in their path, incorporating any technology they encounter into themselves." The tactical displays showed the Dark Swarm fleet's advance. Already 3 Alliance border stations had gone silent. Standard Alliance weapons seemed to become less effective with each encounter as the enemy adapted their defenses. "Their ships are like a virus," Anna said, studying the technical data from the failed attacks. "They evolve in response to whatever hits them. Traditional Alliance doctrine is too predictable. They just keep optimizing their defenses against our standard attacks." Miller watched the tactical display, his mind racing. "That's why they sent the pirates. They were gathering data on our weapons and tactics, preparing countermeasures before the main invasion." Admiral White nodded grimly. "Our standard fleet formations are proving ineffective. We need something they haven't adapted to, something unpredictable." He turned to Miller. "Something like the Relentless." The next few days were a blur of activity. The Relentless became a testing ground for every unconventional idea the crew could devise. Anna's engineering team worked around the clock, pushing their hybrid technology further than ever before. "The key is inconsistency," Anna explained during a late-night strategy session. "The Dark Swarm adapt to patterns. So we've modified our weapons to be deliberately unstable. Each shot is slightly different from the last. They can't optimize their defenses if they can't predict what's coming." Jack had taken this concept further, developing what he called chaos protocols for the targeting systems. "We're not just randomly varying the attacks," he explained. "We're creating controlled unpredictability. Each modification we make to our weapons spawns variations we didn't even plan for." Lisa's contribution was equally vital. "Their ships communicate using quantum signals similar to our own," she reported. "But they're too perfect, too structured. If we introduce enough quantum noise into their network," she smiled, "well, let's just say they won't be coordinating their defenses as well as they'd like." The Relentless was assigned to defend a critical supply line, along with 2 modern Alliance cruisers. They didn't have to wait long for their first encounter with the Dark Swarm. 3 biomechanical ships dropped out of quantum space, their hulls writhing with organic technology. The Alliance cruisers opened fire first, their advanced weapons striking the enemy ships with perfect precision. But just as the reports had warned, the Dark Swarm adapted quickly. By the third volley, their shots were barely penetrating the enemy shields. Then the Relentless entered the fight. The first salvo from their hybrid weapons ripped through the enemy's adapted defenses, the phase-shifted torpedoes behaving in ways the Dark Swarm's predictive systems couldn't account for. The second salvo was completely different, using variations of the technology that even Anna hadn't expected. "Their shields are trying to adapt," Jack reported excitedly, "but they can't form a stable pattern. Our weapons keep changing faster than they can evolve." The Dark Swarm ships, for the first time, seemed confused. Their responses became erratic as Lisa's quantum interference disrupted their coordination. One ship, trying to adapt to too many variables at once, suffered a cascade failure in its defensive systems. The battle that followed was unlike anything in Alliance military history. The Relentless seemed to fight with controlled chaos, each attack different from the last. The Dark Swarm's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and evolve, became their weakness when faced with technology that defied prediction. "Look at their response times," Lisa said, monitoring the enemy communications. "They're actually starting to lag. Their systems can't process the random variations fast enough to form effective countermeasures." The Alliance cruisers, following Miller's lead, began varying their attack patterns as well. The Dark Swarm ships, unable to cope with the combined assault, were eventually destroyed. But the victory revealed something even more important. The Dark Swarm aren't invincible, Miller told Admiral White in his after-action report. "They're just very, very good at adapting to predictable patterns. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's built on the assumption that every problem has an optimal solution. And your ship proves otherwise," the Admiral mused. "By being deliberately suboptimal, by introducing controlled chaos into your systems, you've found a way to fight them that they can't adapt to." Anna stepped forward, her face excited. "Sir, with your permission, we could modify other Alliance ships the same way. Not just copying what we've done with the Relentless, but creating new variations. The more diverse our ship's capabilities are, the harder it will be for the Dark Swarm to adapt to any of them." Admiral White studied the battle data one more time, then made a decision that would change Alliance military doctrine forever. "Do it. Pull whatever resources you need. The Relentless is no longer a test case. It's the prototype for a whole new way of fighting." As Miller watched his crew begin preparations to upgrade other Alliance ships, he couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Alliance had given them their oldest, weakest ship because they didn't trust humans with their best technology. In doing so, they had accidentally given humanity exactly what they needed: the freedom to prove that sometimes the best way forward isn't to have the most advanced technology, but to have the creativity to use technology in ways no one ever expected. 3 weeks had passed since the Relentless's first encounter with the Dark Swarm, and the Alliance fleet was transforming. Engineers from every species had come together, learning from the human crew's innovations. Each ship was being modified in unique ways, ensuring no two vessels fought exactly alike. The Dark Swarm's advance had slowed, but intelligence reported they were massing for a major attack. The Relentless itself had become a floating workshop. Anna's engineering team worked with allies they'd once thought would never accept human ideas. The ship's hybrid systems were evolving daily, becoming something that even their creators couldn't fully predict. "They're still coming," Miller told his crew during a briefing. "But this time, we're ready for them." The tactical display showed the gathered Alliance fleet, 40 ships, each modified with its own version of the Relentless's chaos tech. The warning came at dawn: ship time. The Dark Swarm fleet emerged from quantum space in numbers that made previous encounters look like skirmishes. Hundreds of biomechanical ships, their hulls rippling with adaptive armor, filled the tactical display. "They've been holding back," Jack said, his voice tense. "Those ships, they're different from the ones we fought before. More advanced." Lisa's sensors picked up complex quantum signals flooding space. They're trying to coordinate their adaptations. Each ship is sharing its defensive upgrades with the others. Miller stood on his bridge, watching the enemy fleet approach. This was the moment that would determine if humanity's contributions to the Alliance would be enough. All ships, execute Battle Plan Chaos 1. The Alliance fleet split into smaller groups, each ship running different variations of the hybrid technology. The Relentless led the central formation, its systems humming with barely contained power. Anna had pushed their modifications to the limit, installing prototype systems that even she wasn't entirely sure how would perform. The Dark Swarm struck first, their weapons lashing out with terrible precision. But this time, the Alliance ships didn't present a unified defense to adapt to. Each vessel's shields responded differently, some absorbing energy, others reflecting it, while others seemed to phase in and out of normal space. "Their adaptive algorithms are struggling," Lisa reported, monitoring the enemy's quantum communications. "They're trying to optimize their attacks, but our random variations are creating too many variables." The battle split into dozens of smaller engagements, each one unique. Some Alliance ships used weapons that changed properties mid-flight, while others employed shield harmonics that shifted randomly. The Dark Swarm's attempts to adapt were met with constant change. Their evolutionary advantages turned against them. The Relentless dove into the heart of the enemy fleet, its hybrid weapons unleashing chaos. Phase-shifted torpedoes spiraled through space in patterns that defied prediction, while modified energy beams flickered between different frequencies faster than the enemy's shields could respond. "Their flagship is adapting faster than the others," Jack called out, highlighting a massive vessel at the center of the enemy formation. "It's learning from every attack, distributing new defensive patterns to the fleet." Miller studied the tactical display. "Then that's our target. Anna, give me everything you've got. Lisa, maximum quantum interference. Jack, show them what this old ship can really do." The Relentless turned to face the Dark Swarm flagship, its engines pulsing with power that would have torn a normal Alliance ship apart. The enemy vessel was enormous, its hull a nightmare of organic technology and living metal. "All weapons, fire as they bear," Miller ordered. "Random pattern Alpha through Omega." The Relentless's hybrid arsenal opened up, each weapon firing with controlled chaos. Phase-shifted torpedoes corkscrewed through space, their warheads changing properties as they flew. Energy beams pulsed with frequencies that shifted between shots. The enemy flagship's shields flared as they tried to adapt, patterns of living energy rippling across their surface. "Their adaptation rate is dropping," Lisa reported excitedly. "The quantum interference is working. They can't distribute their defensive upgrades fast enough." The flagship's return fire was devastating, but the Relentless's shields held. Barely. Anna's power distribution network redirected energy faster than the enemy could adapt their attacks, turning their own power against them. "Forward shields at 30%, Jack warned. "We can't take much more of this." Miller watched as the flagship's defenses struggled to cope with their attacks. "We don't need to. Look, their shield matrix is destabilizing. They're trying to adapt to too many variables at once." He was right. The Dark Swarm flagship's attempts to counter every variation of the Relentless's weapons had created conflicts in their defensive systems. Cascading failures began to ripple through their hull as their adaptation protocols fought against each other. "Now," Miller ordered, "all weapons, maximum power. Pattern chaos, final." The Relentless's final barrage was something even its crew hadn't seen before. Every modification, Every innovation they'd created came together in a symphony of controlled destruction. The flagship's overtaxed shields collapsed, and the hybrid weapons tore through its biomechanical hull. The effect on the rest of the Darkswarm fleet was immediate. Without their flagship's coordination, their adaptive advantages began to fail. Alliance ships pressed their attack, each vessel fighting in its own unique way, presenting an ever-changing puzzle that the enemy couldn't solve. When it was over, the surviving Darkswarm ships fled into quantum space, leaving behind a battlefield strewn with the wreckage of their defeated fleet. The Alliance had won its first major victory against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. In the aftermath, Admiral White visited the Relentless again. This time, there was no pretense of inspection or suspicion. He stood in engineering, looking at the hybrid systems that had changed the course of the war. "When we gave you this ship," he said to Miller and his crew, "we thought we were being clever. Giving humans our outdated technology seems safer than trusting you with our best ships." He shook his head. "We didn't understand that the greatest weapon isn't the most advanced technology, but the creativity to use what you have in ways no one ever imagined." Anna, her uniform still stained with engine grease, smiled. "The Relentless was perfect for us precisely because it wasn't perfect. All those flaws and limitations just meant more opportunities to innovate." The Admiral nodded. "The Alliance Council has approved a new ship design program. We want to combine our advanced technology with human innovation, not just copying what you've done here, but encouraging the same kind of creative thinking throughout the fleet." Miller looked around his bridge, at the ship that had gone from being the fleet's joke to its salvation. "Just remember," he said, "sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places." The Relentless would never be just another Alliance vessel. It remained unique, a testament to human ingenuity and the power of thinking differently. The ship that had been meant to hold humanity back had instead pushed the boundaries of what was possible, proving that true strength lies not in having the best tools, but in having the vision to see what those tools could become. As the Relentless moved through space, its hybrid systems humming with barely contained power, it carried with it a lesson that the Alliance would never forget. Never underestimate those who can turn your limitations into their greatest strengths.